it's the story we tell ourselves about ourselves that has the biggest impact on our confidence. And that's because our thoughts become feelings, which become actions, which determine our results. So if we're thinking confidently, we're telling ourselves really good stories, that impacts how we act, that impacts how we show up in the world. And so, if you're telling yourself like, oh, I'm probably going to fail this lift, I'm going to fail this lift, the likelihood of you failing that lift is pretty high.
Right.
So, but if you're like, you know what, I can do this, and you're trying to give yourself that opportunity, it's not 100% guarantee you're going to make this lift or make that attempt.
Right.
But you're surely giving yourself a better opportunity than if you're telling yourself you're not going to make it, right? You're not going to make it if you're telling yourself that. So
yeah. Well, here's a struggle on that. I want to highlight this again, that you said, victim mentality is an acquired mentality and it's built on a habit. And I think that's something that it can be very easy to overlook, because we think, oh, you are this or you're not, where these things all build over time. So that's why I've always been really curious about language that we use, even the small little things like the throwaway language that we say, oh my God, I need to do that. It's like, no, you don't need to do anything. It's like, if you change those little things, all of a sudden that builds such a consistency. And it doesn't seem like a lot in the moment. And it can even be very defensive, because like, oh, like, don't have a victim mentality. Well, I don't have a victim mentality, like immediately going on the defensive. Like I started doing this a couple years ago in journaling practice, of just actually saying like, what is the stream of consciousness that's coming out, and seeing the words that I was using. I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize like I'm saying this over and over again, like the same stuff. And that's a really powerful thing. And I think that's where I'm always curious about this with mindset, because it's almost like a weird word, like mindset. Like, we're thinking of stuff all day. How do we overcome this from here? But what I want to ask you about is, like, when those thoughts come in, like, oh, I'm not going to make this lift or so, it's those thoughts still, no matter how positive of a mindset you might have, are still probably going to seep in here once in a while. Is it more about catching those thoughts and changing it, or having those thoughts less? Like, what is the mechanism we can say, okay, we're moving in the right direction of building our mindset into a stronger one?
Definitely. So you're spot on that. No matter how good you are, if you're number one in the world, you're making billions of dollars, like this, you have these intrusive negative thoughts, and we have this negativity bias, and that is for our survival. It's not something that's going to change anytime soon. Right. So we might as well learn how can we work with this, right? So for me, it's like trying to help an athlete build awareness, much like you did with your journaling practice, right? I'm trying to build awareness on what it is that I'm saying to myself. And when you recognize that it's something that's not serving you or supporting you in what is your goal, to either reframe it. So if you were gonna make an attempt and you were like, oh, I'm not gonna make this, then you would immediately be like, no, I can make this. And so it's really about talking to yourself more than you listen. And that also comes from having stuff prepared to say. So having affirmations that are relative to you, that are personal to you, versus some off the shelf, like, I'm successful, something that is very personal to what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and telling yourself those things regularly, so that one, it rewires those pathways in your brain, which influences, this is a long answer to what you asked, but it influences our reticular activating system. So the more that you start to tell yourself things about yourself that you want to be true, as if they're true, then your subconscious mind, which is super powerful, is a supercomputer. It deals with 95% of what's going on in our brain. And it starts to then filter things that support that. So I can't remember if we had this conversation before, but if I say that, or if, let's say the car that I want is a white Tesla, all of a sudden you start seeing white Teslas everywhere, right? And that's because you've told your mind that that's something that's important to you. And the same goes true so I said The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait. It depends on a habitual thought process. Confidence is the same thing. It's an acquired personality trait, depends on a habitual thought process.